Hello and welcome to LangTime Chat, episode 35. My name is David, and this is...
Jesse, are you sure it's episode 35? Is that right? No, I think that's right. I think you're right. Did you check?
I just followed in order from the folder.
I hope that's right.
I hope so too. So, today we're going to do a podcast episode that is mainly going to be led by me. Every so often, Jesse will say something, but
Hey, yo.
like something like that. But it will be mostly me because what we're going to talk about is this is going to be a podcast, and it was suggested by somebody on the Discord.
I think it was Jake.
Yeah, that goes over the expansion animals. So, as a recap, in the first 5 seasons of LangTime Studio, we were committed and we had set out to do languages for 5 different types of animals. And these corresponded to the 5 animal kingdoms set in a game board game that I am making, where I wanted each of the animals to have languages. These are anthropomorphic animals that have been mutated and rapidly evolved due to some sort of mysterious mutagen that is leaked from the days of humans. This is a post-human Earth set in and around Canada. And that was a later decision. Originally, it was going to be Northern Europe, but now it is Canada, Northern Canada. And the animals were in the order that we did them. Rabbits, opossums, mice, cats, and dogs for the upcoming season. Now, after that, though, in the game, I created a bunch of classes that these animals could be because they're going to battle against each other. And I created a whole bunch of classes, I think like 10, but I had ideas for others. And so I thought that while this was good for the original version of the game, there could be an expansion that featured more classes and more animals. At the end of every season of LangTime Studio, we had a vote on what the next language would be. That vote is moot for season 4 because there's only one animal left. And so we thought instead we would vote on which animals to do in the upcoming expansion. And the vote is happening right now.
It is, and I have some favorites, but
Yeah.
I don't want to say them.
And a number of people were asking questions, very good questions, because like it's kind of hard to decide, especially if you see all the animals and you're somebody like me, you love them all.
Right.
But it's just we can only pick 2 or 3 for the expansion, I think. I mean,
For now.
it could go as many as 5, but yeah, for now.
For now.
And there were a number of voters who were like, well, I mean, they're all cute. Is there something else you could tell us about them to help us make a decision? And that is what this podcast aims to do. So, as an overview, the animals that we have for patrons to vote on are badgers, bats, beavers, chipmunks, coyotes, foxes, porcupines, raccoons, rats, river otters, skunks, squirrels, and wolves.
No bears?
No bears. So here's the thing with that. It's a good question. It's a fair question. So we were sticking to mammals, of course, but there was an open question about the larger mammals. So mostly we'd stuck to small mammals, with the idea being that they would increase in size a little bit. So like the mice aren't, mouse size. They're bigger size. They're reapy cheap size. Not Redwall, but reapy cheap. So with these smaller mammals, I think the biggest one that we have here is the wolves. The idea is that they'd all be about the same size. They'd be within range. Larger mammals like horses, elk, caribou, bears. What are some other large mammals in and around that area? Moose.
Moose, yeah.
Yeah. Donkeys, mules. Though I suppose in a post-Earth world, there wouldn't be any more mules, would there?
I don't feel like there would be.
Be very unlikely. Anyway, if they were to undergo the same process, they'd be quite a bit larger and have just an absurd physical advantage. And so then the question was like, well, do you make them shrink? So it's like right now we're just saying we're going to leave the large mammals out of it. We're also leaving the other species out of it just for the sake of simplicity. However, I did have an idea that I might share later in the podcast about that. And you'll notice that there's river otters there, but there are also sea otters, and they certainly are within the same size range. But I wanted to steer clear of ocean animals because there, of course, there's also dolphins and whales, walruses. Those are a large mammal.
All of our original ones were land dwelling, and so that would be difficult.
The idea is that it's spread through the river. Naturally, of course, it would get to the ocean if it was in a river, but
sure.
But we're gonna stick to kind of like the river areas.
Expansion on the expansion on the expansion.
Yeah, when we get there. So anyway, this is the set, and so I wanted to go through each one to kind of describe what the thinking was, because these weren't just random. I mean, first these are animals that occur in Canada, so there's that, but they weren't random. There's thinking behind each one. And so I'm going to kind of arrange these by the alliances that they have with the existing animals. So we're going to go talk about river otters first, but there are two main influences, right, on this thing. By the way, this is a picture I took for those that are watching the video. This is a picture I took at the Otter and Butterfly Sanctuary in southern England, near Devon. What's the name of it? Buckfastleigh.
The name of it is You Still Haven't Taken Jesse There.
That's true. I've been there twice. Jesse has been there 0 times. But Buckfastleigh is where it is. So there were two big influences on me when it comes to this game. Number one, of course, the biggest one is the game Shining Force, which is what I wanted to emulate the combat of that game, but in a board game setting as opposed to a video game setting. So that's the biggest one. But also, in terms of world building, one of the things I absolutely loved and was most exciting about World of Warcraft is that you could have all of these different people. They call them races in the game, some of which are very humanoid, some of which are less humanoid, that are in factions. And then even at the outset of the game, there's way more of these humanoid factions than you get to play. And as they brought out expansions, you got to become characters, or you could make characters that were in more of these humanoid races, which was always very exciting because it's like there were stories there. They used to be enemies, and they become allies of certain of one faction or the other. And allied specifically with one of the other humanoid races more than the others, and there are reasons for that. And there are new ones that come out with each expansion, and it's very exciting. It's one of the things I enjoyed most. And in fact, the thing that I miss the most about World of Warcraft is the characters that I created and the way they looked, and I just thought they were really cool, and I liked putting them in awesome clothes, and it was just a fun thing to do. And so that was kind of the thinking here. So to start off, are you taking a video of me doing this?
I just want to take pictures.
Okay.
Record the moment.
From my bad side. As we know, everybody knows that the right side is my bad side.
And you shouldn't let me sit on your bad side. But go on.
All right.
River otters.
River otters is the first one that we're going to come to. Obviously, these are... Jesse and I are a big fan of otters.
I love otters.
Yeah, and river otters are just adorable. And also river otters make immediate sense. After all, this thing, it started coming through the rivers and came out of the rivers. And so it makes most sense, of course. River otters, they are in and about rivers. So they would be one of the ones that it makes the most sense. Mm-hmm. And I looked at river otters, and they're very playful and a bit more active, but also very nice. Not as vicious, but playful. And so what I saw them being is kind of like an intermediary between the rabbits and the cats. Because like they're playful enough and lively enough to hang with cats, but they're also nice enough to be friends to rabbits. And so I saw them as kind of like a nice little bridge between the rabbits and the cats, who, are kind of more or less enemies, because they live their lives very differently. And so river otters just made immediate sense to me. I mean, they'll definitely be in the game at one point, even if they're not for the first one. From there, I wanted to go to beavers, and to kind of give you a little personal background. So the beaver is my favorite animal, and there is a reason for this. It's because one of my very, very first stuffed animals was a stuffed beaver. And this is, if you are watching the video, you see pictures of my stuffed beaver. 3 of them are rather modern pictures, and you can see he's seen some life. But there's also a picture of me in my robin costume, and that has to be when I am 4. 4 or 5, and so my beaver would have been very young at that point, and it's a little blurry, but you can see
He's much darker.
yeah, he's much darker and softer. He looks a lot more like a beaver in his younger days. And so this beaver, by the way, whom I call Beavy, has been with me since I was, I think, 2.5 or 3.
I call a different beaver Beefy in my head. I don't know that we've named the other one. Do you have a picture of that beaver?
Oh, no, I don't. There's, of course, a beaver that Jesse made for me, and this beaver sits upon our bed. And, I have plenty of pictures. I just didn't include one in the slideshow.
Wow.
It's a rainbow beaver.
Wow. But like in my head, I call that Beavy, and now I'm
Really?
like, oh no, this is Beavy.
Oh, yeah, this is Beavy. He also, for a very brief time, in kindergarten, I thought he should have a name, and so I called him Saleh. Not Solly, but Saleh.
As you would.
And but that name, I didn't keep up with it. Anyway, Beavy has been my constant friend. You can also see in a couple of other these pictures, one of my other very, very old friends, Panthy, who's a panther. There he is in those 2 on the end. But anyway, of course, the beaver is one of the proudest Canadian animals. Been there a long time. Hunted near to extinction in the 19th century, unfortunately, but they're still around. And they, of course, live in and around the rivers. And to me, they seem like they would be natural friends to both well, of course, the river otters, but also the rabbits, because they're very docile, and also the opossums. A kind of interesting bridge between those 2.
Not the mice. Beavers are very industrious.
You're right, they are. They are very industrious.
Sure, they have their playful moments, but they're also like, they build all of these structures and like are concerned with making sure they get the amount, like the right amount of water through, et cetera, et cetera.
That's true.
They feel to me like they would also be ambassadors to the mice.
I think you're right. No, that's really cool. A nice 2 different sides of the coin, I think, when it comes to not mechanization, but like construction and technological advancement.
Yeah.
I could see the mice being very technological, artificial, where the beavers are trying to stick with natural construction.
Which is why the opossums are, of course,
Yeah.
interested in them.
Yeah. So
And the rabbits.
yeah, so I wanted to stop a moment here to talk about, there's often you think about, when you think about an expansion to a game, usually there's some functional difference. And this is where one of the places where I think beavers and river otters would come into play. So I imagine, of course, this is just a 2D map that characters are on as kind of a battlefield. And it'll just be natural terrain, and so there'll be rivers in them that have to be traversed. But river otters and beavers seem like they could naturally go in the river and use it to their advantage, which is not something that I had planned at all as part of the original game. So this is something that would need to be worked on, either coming up with a class or making it, okay, so like it could either be a species native trait, so that beavers can use the water and river otters could use the water, or it would be a class where each of them has, specializes in this class and can use it. And then, for example, there could be like maybe a mouse diver class where they've created, a suit.
The little suit,
Yeah, that allows them to swim and do roughly the same things. But it essentially would be expanding the original functionality of the game well beyond what I had originally planned. So, and we'll see another of those in a minute. So, that is the river otters and the beavers. Next, the raccoons. So, for those that...
God, I love there's a picture at the bottom where this little raccoon is baring his teeth, but then it makes his little nose stick up off his snout in such a cute way that it's like, okay, it'd be terrifying if that raccoon were doing that in person next to me. I would be terrified because raccoons are actually terrifying, and I know this from experience. But in a picture, it's like the most adorable thing.
It is. So
but go on.
The picture I have here, for those that have seen it already, you know that I worked on the 100 for every season except for the first. And the language I created, Trigetta slang, was spoken by the Grounders, and the Grounders were led by a character named Lexa. And Lexa was commonly portrayed with this black war paint over her eyes. And so the fandom basically started putting a raccoon in as a stand-in for her, because with her war paint on it, she kind of looks like a raccoon. And so there are tons of pictures where they've paired Lexa up with a raccoon looking in a similar fashion. And honestly, the pictures they found are just extraordinary. This is a sampling. And so naturally, of course, I thought of raccoons. And raccoons, they're very cute. They can be very sweet. They can also be very vicious. And they kind of like get into things, So it just seems like that they would never have very close ties with anybody, but it's like they would get the opossums, they would get the cats, the rabbits maybe not so much, but they seem like somewhere in the opossum cat spectrum is where they would exist. And raccoons, very iconic animal, and they're a North American animal, right? They don't have these in Europe.
Right, but now I'm wondering why you didn't do the Matt Damon otter pictures.
I'm not aware of those.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to pull those up while you keep talking. Because yes, they are... In fact, the word raccoon is from an indigenous language.
It is, yeah. So it just seems like, if we're having, a game set in the North American continent, all right, we have the opossums. Raccoons just seem like another obvious addition. They should definitely be in there at some point. Should I wait for you? Let's see.
I'm showing David the Matt Damon looks like an otter meme, that there's an otter for all of these Matt Damon images.
Huh.
And they're great, and I will make sure to post it on Discord.
Yeah.
And if you're not aware, I'm a Matt Damon fan, and so that's why I was like, wait, you have Lexa looking like a raccoon, but...
All right, so next is porcupines, and
yes.
Is this another native North American animal, or do they have these?
I'm going to look it up. I think it's native to the Americas. I don't think it's North America.
Sure.
I think it's all of the Americas, but I may be completely wrong because I am not entirely sure. So you keep talking while I look up this information.
Okay, so porcupines are another one. These guys just seem natural allies to the opossums. But porcupines are another one where there is potential, and I might have to think about this, to bring in an extra element to the game. So, yeah?
There's two families of porcupines. The Old World and New World. Old World porcupines, live in Italy, Asia, and most of Africa.
Okay.
New World porcupines are indigenous to North and South America.
How about that?
And so the New World ones live in wooded areas, can climb trees. They're less strictly nocturnal. The old world ones are like strictly nocturnal. They are large and terrestrial. So the new world ones, the ones that we would think of, are the ones that can like climb trees. They
Hmm. They look kind
are
of different.
smaller.
But do they have those points on them? Like, are they still?
Yeah, they still have the points.
Huh.
They belong
look
to the
very
same bigger
different.
family.
Yeah.
So they belong to the same larger family. But oh my gosh, the largest species of porcupines is the third largest living rodent in the world, after the capybara and the beaver.
Wow. Holy smoke.
So anyway,
Yeah.
they're related. They look very different, but like I believe what you have on the screen is a New World one. I believe
Yeah.
that's what
It's
we would associate
definitely.
with the Americas.
Yeah. Because I've just pulled up my phone and looked at a whole bunch of old world porcupines. They look like nothing I'd ever seen.
Okay.
It's incredible. They kind of look like porcupines if like they wanted to do their hair like kind of like a 50s like doo-wop guy or something, like a 50s greaser. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
That will be the expansion of the expansion of the expansion pack,
Old worlds.
which
Yeah.
is the expansion of an expansion.
So one of the things that I loved about the initial release of World of Warcraft during the first, I think it didn't survive after the first expansion. I think it was gone by Wrath of the Lich King. Was that for one of the classes, for priests, you could be a priest with several different of the races in the game, and each race had its own unique ability if you were a priest. Like dwarves had Fear Ward, which allowed them not to be to ward off one fear spell, whereas like the trolls had a hex spell, which put a weakness thing on them. It was really, really cool. They had to get rid of it because they couldn't balance it for player versus player combat, and I understand that. But rather than getting rid of it, I wanted them to expand it to all the other classes. I thought it was the coolest thing. And so, for example, you could do something like this. Say that, porcupines, there's going to be facing in this game. You could do a thing where it's like if you attack a porcupine from the back, you take a point of damage because of the quills.
Yes.
So that was just a thought I had anyway. So they would be really cool to add. All right, porcupines next. Skunks. So is this another one that they don't have these in Europe?
Let me double check.
Like,
No, you keep talking about skunks. I'm checking.
it's just I don't know why.
It does say it's a cat-sized American mammal. So
Unbelievable.
I'm pretty sure it's just in the Americas.
There are so many, because this is not something I thought about for probably the first 39 years of my life. But like I've been learning recently, there are so many animals that I take to be so common that are just not found in other parts of the world. I mean, there are certain animals where it's like, okay, that these are only here. Like, American bison, it's got American right in it. And like, moose, that's there. That lions are in a certain part of the world, giraffes and, koalas. But like, I never thought about opossums. They're just so common, I was shocked. I mean, that was really what was the whole start of recentering where the game was. I just assumed opossums were everywhere. And yeah.
Okay, so the skunks as we know them are in the Americas. They are, however, related to the old world stink badgers. And the stink badgers can be found in the Greater Sunda Islands, Sumatra, Java, Borneo, Malaysia, Brunei.
Wow. Okay, so skunks are these, notorious, amazing little animals, very darling.
These are stink badgers.
Whoa, they look totally different.
but they're related.
Yeah.
But go on.
They're black and white in coloring. They have these cute fluffy tails,
They're Pepe Le Pew.
and able to release a horrible stink. And they're around here, and you know when you drive by a place where there is one, because you can smell them. So this is another potential way to add to the game. Unique animal specific abilities, because obviously the skunks have one. And they're also really cute. I think they would be natural friends to the opossums.
Yeah.
And potentially the rabbits.
Potentially.
Are they meat eaters?
Are they meat eaters?
Skunks, yeah.
That is a good question.
They might be.
I
know they sure love discarded bird seed. Huh. Learned that the hard way.
I am looking up a skunk diet. Mostly.
Yeah.
Okay, mostly insects like grasshoppers, bees, beetles, crickets.
Mostly insects.
When it's like food is scarce, they'll eat fruit, nuts, birdseed, pet food.
Oh, okay. Well,
so like not so much meat eaters.
They're insectivores. Sounds like. So
onions are poisonous to skunks.
Well, they are now my kindred. So
so is cat food.
Yeah. So there's a very particular reason I chose this photo, though. The certain skunks, not all skunks, but certain skunks, will do this kind of a handstand.
Yeah.
And look straight at you and kind of point at you. Not all skunks. But I've seen this in real life. It was while I was in a car. It was while I was going around Eastgate Park. I saw it at night. I saw this skunk doing this. I'm like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. I had to go back immediately and Google it and saw all these images.
You need to run when you see it.
Well, luckily I was in a car.
Still need to get out of there.
And so they basically, if they stand like this and point at you, you're in trouble. But one of the classes that I thought of, the expansion classes I thought of for the game, a lot of the original ones are very traditional, but one of the classes I thought of for the game was a dancing class. Because when it comes to movement, you have essentially a range of movement for your character. It can go a certain number of spaces up into up or down, and then left or right, giving it a whole range of movement. And so I thought for a dancer class, they could have specific dances where if that space is available to them, they can move in that space and then, do damage or do whatever if they have that movement space available to them. So in other words, if there's nothing blocking their path, like a river or another player or like a tree trunk or something like that. And I was looking at this and I'm like, this skunk is a dancer.
Okay. All good. And I was going to support all your yay skunk things because avocados are also toxic to them. And I'm like, hey, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently they also eat rabbits.
They eat rabbits.
Besides insects, other important components of the skunk diet are earthworms, grubs, cottontail, rabbit, small rodents, probably including mice.
Yep.
So I don't think they would be friends.
No. So they would probably be in the cat opossum friend group, maybe even dog.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. All right. So where we have skunks, moving on. So I put these two together, badgers and coyotes. And you might think, why on earth?
I'm already wondering why.
Yeah.
But go on.
So badgers, of course, obvious friends to opossums and skunks. Skunks are, after all, stink badgers. Coyotes, obvious friends to the dogs. And I'll talk a little bit more about the dogs in a minute.
And to the cats.
Coyotes, friends to cats?
Sure.
Really? They don't eat cats?
If the cats are big enough, they would want to hunt together. Coyotes are small.
That's true. But this is the reason why I put badgers and coyotes together. They are apparently natural friends.
Aww.
For whatever reason, There is a viral video, and I encourage you to go find this video. I didn't want to have to figure out how to embed it. But there's a night vision camera. It was just one of those things pointed at a drainage ditch, probably to make sure people don't go in there.
I think I've seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's this coyote that's walking into the pipe and then stops and waits, turns to look, and this badger comes up, waits for the badger to come, and then they walk into the tunnel side by side. And yeah, this is apparently a weird fact of nature that badgers and coyotes hang around together and do stuff together. Totally unlikely, and yet they are friends. And so it feels like to me, if you're going to do badgers or coyotes, you should have the other one in there because they're just natural friends. So if neither of them maybe gets enough votes this time, maybe they could come in together for a future expansion. But you really got to see the video. It's so darling.
I feel like they would actually feed on different things, yet be hunting at the same time and could provide protection for each other.
That's probably why. Yeah.
Like and coyotes are something I grew up with. And so, yeah, they feel both very dog and cat-like to me because it's kind of like a fox, right? Where it's like, yeah, they're dogs and foxes are technically dogs, but like there's something very cat-like about them in the nocturnal nature that they have and the way that they hunt. There's something very cat-like, which is why I say dogs and cats.
Yeah. Incidentally, I didn't grow up with coyotes, but coyotes are here now. It's something that's happened with kind of urban Southern California. The coyotes were, chased out decades ago, but like starting in like, I don't know, like the early 2000s, coyotes started to come back. And so now it's just kind of a thing where it's like, well, you can't really keep your small dogs or cats outside anymore because coyotes wander around. And I mean, sure enough, we've seen them on my parents' street, the street that I grew up on. My stepdad has a video of this coyote, broad daylight, walking across the street, like right near their house. It's so strange because it's like, this isn't something that we grew up with. This is new.
So I know it's not something you grew up with, but like, the sunroom of my dad's house now.
Yeah.
That used to be just a back patio area. That's a new addition as a room. And so that was where like I learned to ride a bike, so on, because it was just a concrete patch where we could play. And yeah, I used to look out of my bedroom window down on that concrete patch and see like a whole group of coyotes.
Wow.
And so like to me, it's like, well, yeah, coyotes, they'll come up to your house, they'll eat your dog food. You got to like bring in the food at night.
Yeah. And I wanted to be clear, when I said we didn't grow up with it, I mean we in Southern California, like in Orange County.
I knew that. I just wanted to say like how much I grew up with coyotes because it was like, and that was like the sound, the howling at night. It's like, oh, got to make sure all the dogs are inside.
And of course, I've seen where you live. Close. I'm not at all surprised.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Lovely place.
Is that what you're going to say?
No, it's beautiful.
It is beautiful. It's in the forest.
All right, so now we're going to go to foxes. And
best pictures ever!
So I have to say the only reason there are two reasons I included foxes. I mean, one, they're there, but mainly it's because Jesse draws these charming foxes. And
I love them.
And they're just so cute. Something that I had to think about is that there's two main types of foxes in Canada. There's the orange fox that we're familiar with, and there's also the Arctic fox.
Which is also beautiful.
Very beautiful animals. So I don't know if they should be separate or if they should both be included under the rubric of foxes. But essentially, with the foxes, also random tidbit of trivia, in 5th grade, for whatever reason, I was trying to, draw and I learned a little bit about how animation happened at Disney. So I was trying to draw something like that. And I basically drew just a complete copy of Robin Hood, Disney's Robin Hood.
Oh, I love that one.
I mean, that was trying to pretend it was original. And, I tried to cut them out and put them on a background to kind of do what they did, with cells and animation. And, foxes are just beautiful, lovely animals. I think of them as like halfway between puppy and kitten.
Yeah.
And so it feels like if anybody's going to bridge the gap between cats and dogs, it's going to be foxes.
Of course.
Yeah. And then, so with the dogs, we've been talking up to this point, like as we've been doing LangTime Studio, the animals have been pretty much a cohesive whole. But with the dogs, the idea is that there was infighting amongst the dogs and they formed a kind of confederation amongst the dog clans. And so the dogs kept to themselves. And so there are many different types of dogs that are now confederated. And I love that idea because there could always be those that bought in and those that didn't. And so I always figured that, things like coyotes, wolves, and foxes, didn't buy in, and then maybe they were brought in later on. This is a type of thing that happened directly, all the time in World of Warcraft that I thought was really, really cool. And so, for the doggish ones, I felt like they could come in later. So foxes are one, and wolves are another. Wolves are the biggest ones, so they're very, it's iffy, but they're very dangerous. But the one of the Finnish metal bands I love, Sonata Arctica, one of their big themes is wolves. So I've got 3 Sonata Arctica albums here. And so it was like, if we did wolves, I mean, obviously, these are going to be heavy metal wolves, and it would be very, very exciting. And so that would be a cool thing to add. Yeah.
I thought I had maybe transported an old picture. We actually had a dog that was part wolf, and you can tell in some of the pictures. And so we just called the dog Wolf because
Really?
what you gonna call a dog who's part wolf?
Wow.
I'll have to try to find the old pictures over there.
Oh, exciting. Okay, so.
Oh, you did this.
So moving on, Bats. This was a comic that was posted in our Discord. I think by
Bubba.
Yeah, I think Bubba did. And the artist is listed down there. Their Instagram is Plumier.
Plumier.
It's a French. So I wonder if somebody has written over it and made that English where it was French before. Anyway.
Until you find out it's really Plumier. It's not French at all.
It's just an acronym for their name, which is that many names long.
Plium.
Peter, Leon, Eustace.
Ire.
It's a name that starts with U.
Unger. Felix Unger.
Anyway, so the comic, it's a 3-panel comic. In the first comic, you see a bat underneath, and you see, look, and then the next panel is 2 little mice in a field looking up.
Oh yeah, those are mice. I thought those were possums at first glance because their tails. Look at their tails.
It could be
but
rats.
They are mice. Yeah.
And then you see the third panel. You see bats in the sky, and then you see the backs of the 2 mice looking up, and they say angels. Because, I mean, if you've ever seen a bat, they do look like little winged mice. Very darling. Obvious friends to the mice. And I think that they would be taken as something special, too, by the opossums, given the fact that they could fly. And this would be another one where it would introduce a new mechanic to the game. So I was imagining, standing figurines like you would get in something like Gloomhaven or Hero Quest. And so if you had a flying class, the question is, how would you do that? Because one thing that you could do is be able to finish your turn on the same square as somebody else. But you wouldn't be able to do that with a figurine. You could do that with like a disc. So I don't know how that would work. But basically, it's something that would add some serious functionality to the game. The bats would be able to fly, and maybe there could be a flying class, and there would be, contraptions that would allow you to fly that were built by the mice, and so they might be able to have one as well. Anyway, So that one will require some more thought, but that's one reason to do it. Now, rats, I've always thought of the little pirate rats, and this is a rat with a little
I love
pirate
it.
hat on it. Rats, one of the interesting things about it is we know that our plan is that the rats and the mice share a proto-language, and then the rats have broken away for any number of reasons. Just absolutely, they're done with the, chaotic bureaucracy of the mice and form their own little pirate society. They have their own version of the language that would be related, and so that would be a fun LangTime experience, I think.
I agree. I love that you went for the pirate image, but I'm a little surprised you didn't go for any of the images or videos that you took in Sweden of the
Oh
rats.
my God, there were so many.
And like, I'm a little surprised because we were right next to the rats, and David was so excited. And we were just hanging out watching these rats at night go about their business.
Yeah, that was really in Malmö, right?
Malmö.
Yeah, we didn't see any in.
No. It
Yeah.
was all in Malmö.
Yeah. That's right. And that mystery, the bridge, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I want to watch that. Anyway, so yeah, that would be a cool language thing to do. And they would also, of course, be the obvious banner waivers for another planned class that I had that I kind of call the gambler class, which would have a lot of fourth wall breaking abilities. So an obvious reason why they're not in the base version. But in terms of how to structure turns, I've fallen more and more in love with the idea of using cards in the same way that an old style computer would. So in other words, if one particular character is faster than another, it might have 5 movement cards, whereas another one has 3 movement cards. You take all the movement cards together, you shuffle them up, and that's how you determine turn order. But like the gambler class could do things like, for example, search through the deck and pull cards up to the front. And so suddenly, like, you can do things like, take 3 cards and take the 3 turns that you want to right in a row. They might be able to go to the discard and pull cards back and do secondary turns. There are also going to be kind of these damage over time abilities where you hit somebody with it and like you give them a marker and they say like, the next time this character has a turn, they take X number of damage. That's another thing they could do. They could pull their turn up to the front so that they have to take that damage before somebody gets a chance to heal them, something like that. So anyway, the rats felt like they would be the perfect standard bearer for that class. Which would take a lot of thought and coordination. Again, something perfect for an expansion, not for a base version of the game. Okay, chipmunks. Look,
Yes.
they're just the most darling, cute little animals that you've ever seen. They look like Disney princesses. Just give them little crowns. Obvious friends to the rabbits and the mice. Very cute, and I just want to put them in little hats. That's all I want to do.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yep. Okay. And by the way, that's right, I forgot about this. Also, another reason that chipmunks are in there is that my nickname growing up was Chipmunk Cheeks, right? Was that it?
I think it was Chipmunkin.
But these are 2 early photos of me. I think the one on the left in the red, I think that's from 5th grade. No, 4th grade maybe. The one on the 4th grade.
Okay, listen. These
4th
are
grade.
really cute images of you.
The one on the right is kindergarten.
I don't think they represent the chipmunk cheeks that gave you the nickname. Like, I feel like those were younger.
Probably.
I feel like when you were... Some younger images of you had some more bulgy, cute little cheeks that are more chipmunk style.
Look at that. I mean, it looks like I'm making a face, but that's just how I smile.
You had cheekbones, and that's to be desired by many models. But that Not chipmunk cheeks, as I think most of us think of them, but very cute images.
By the way, you see what I'm wearing?
A green wristband, which is the yarn wristband of the
Yep,
friendship bracelet
that's
that
right.
like everybody had way back when.
That's right.
Although I think mine was pink.
All right, and then of course, squirrels.
Obviously, they are the mice of the I guess forest rodents.
Yeah.
They are the large mice. They are rodents for sure. And if you live where they are, you know why they're rodents.
Yeah, this is a picture I took just outside, on the way to get a haircut. And squirrels, obvious friends to the rabbits and the mice, and
Yes.
maybe the opossums. But they're just darling little huggable creatures, very identifiable shapes. You can pick them up and hug them, and also put little hats on them and give them bows and arrows.
So listen, I think squirrels are cute. I will take pictures of them. But I will also take pictures of rats and not necessarily get close to them. I will never get close to a squirrel on purpose. And in part, that's because my dad was actually bit through the finger by a squirrel. And I was traumatized by that story. And I will never get close to a squirrel.
Probably because he was trying to shoot it and eat it.
He was trying to feed it, but,
Really?
well, he was a kid.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, I mean, his finger wasn't as big then.
And it was bit through by a squirrel.
Didn't hinder his playing career.
And so maybe it did. Maybe that's why it was cut short. But I was traumatized by the story enough that I was like, stay away from squirrels. But I mean, well, raccoons are far more fierce than squirrels, I think, and they are more terrifying if you've ever seen one up close. But at the same time, I always keep my distance. So when I see people purposefully like feeding squirrels, I'm like, no, you do not do that. Sure, you can like drop food and run, but do not hold your hand down for the squirrel to eat from. That is just like being asked to be bitten, but whatever. Go on.
So, squirrels then, cute, cuddly squirrels that everybody loves to pet and
They
feed.
are mice and rabbits all the way, but like also I would not feed either wild mice or rabbits. Domesticated, sure. Wild, no, because wild animals in general are meant to be left alone.
So we could have a squirrel as a pet, a domesticated squirrel.
Are we gonna go to a squirrel pet store and get a domesticated squirrel?
We'll find a way.
No.
All right, so that is the roundup. Oh, another thing to mention about rats, by the way, is that in 4th and 5th grade, I had the same teacher, Mrs. Drum, and we had class pets, 2 rats. And they were just lovely, lovely friends. And so we used to feed them and pick them up and pet them. There was Mrs. Frisbee, who was kind of like a dark gray and white in patches. And then the white rat. What was the white rat called? I can't remember what the white rat was called. But they were just darling animals. I loved them, and I loved to pet them.
So I never had any class pets like that from my own classes. But when my sister was in 6th grade, and Miss Redmond, who was also my science teacher in 6th grade, but she learned her lesson in this 6th grade class. My sister's older than me. In my sister's 6th grade class, got 2 gerbils that were supposed to be 2 males as class pets. They were not 2 males, and they had babies. And so then there were baby gerbils, and she couldn't keep them all. And so she ended up being like, someone take the gerbils. And so we got one. And that's how we got Chubbles, our gerbil.
Oh.
And gerbils are they look a little bit like mice, but also a little bit like kangaroo rats. So they have the little tufts at the end of their tails. It's very cute. So we had Chubbles for 2 years because of that. But then Miss Redmond learned her lesson and never had any more class pets. So
Yeah. That was the only class I ever had a class pet in. Just Mrs. Drum. Nobody else ever did it. I mean, it seems,
smart.
well, yeah, it seems just like an incredible responsibility and headache.
Yeah.
So, more power to the people that do it. But, anyways, that was just another connection that I had to rats. So, hopefully that gives you some more information and some more like background information to be able to vote. It's kind of a strange vote because it's like one of the benefits of having a forced choice vote is that you have to choose one or the other. But it was like you needed to be able to choose either 2 or 3 or something. So in this case, it's almost like not voting for one almost means more because you could vote for however many you want. You could easily just vote for every single one, but then you haven't really affected anything. Anyway, but maybe this will give you a more informed decision as you do the poll, which will be up, at least until season 5 begins, maybe a little longer. Yeah.
I agree.
All right. So yeah. Anyway, you want to? You've said some things, but you want to just tell us straight out which are your favorites?
Well, no, I don't want to like sway things and whatnot and mention how cute otters are, but and foxes because they're fun to draw.
Yeah, it's really hard because there are so many favorites here, and somewhere
I
it's
would love
like,
to draw a porcupine. Could you imagine all the little quills? That could be fun.
and it's like like in terms of, I had the connection to the rats, but even so, they're not as exciting animals, but still the linguistic idea is very interesting.
And also, I like drawing mice, so rats are really just an extension of that.
Yeah. I'd love to see what you could do with bats. Oh, the funny thing was I also wanted to mention the badgers because, of course, on our Discord, right, we have an emoji for each animal for their language, but there's no opossum emoji.
And so we were using the
We were
badger.
using the badger.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
That's right. If we actually got badgers, what would we do? We'd have to label Unicode.
It's a badger, not just a badger.
Unicode needs more opossums.
It would be a badger mouse is an opossum, and then a badger is a badger.
I bet some language would actually call them something like that.
I bet so.
Yeah. Coyotes, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So anyway, that was it. Thank you for listening. Thanks for waiting patiently. We know this wasn't up on the 1st, but it's January 1st. Give us a break.
Maybe not up on the 2nd, but it'll be up by the 3rd.
Yeah. All right, everybody. So have a wonderful day, evening, night, afternoon.
Yes, indeed. Stay grammar and have fun voting.
Right on. Bye, everybody.